This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, Real MVPs, Ricky Widmer here, along with the Mark Weber. And you may be noticing, guys, I'm on YouTube and I only see your logo. What's up? I don't see your beautiful faces, and that's because we have an over-the-phoner today. Mark calling in all the way from his beautiful house. So Mark kind of kicking it up on the couch, relaxing, watching some NFL Network probably while we record this mock draft, the final mock draft of the year for the Onside Kick. If you're new, this is the NFL podcast for MVP. And Mark, it has been a great journey, but the journey doesn't quite end today, but our mocking journey ends today. I will ask you, before we get into everything, usually I ask you how you're doing. I'm going to ask you this time, how have you felt about this mock draft journey that we've had for 2019?
It's been fine. We kind of got the wrench thrown into it somewhat early because our favorite quarterback, Kyler Murray, decided to not play baseball, supposedly. It's been an interesting one because there's a lot of good defensive players available, and it's kind of a deep draft in that side and not so deep in others, such as the quarterback or the running backs. So it's been an interesting one, that's for sure.
Yeah, and this is what we get with a defensive one after coming off of, 5 quarterbacks last year taken in the first round. So if you're new to how we do things, actually, before I get into that, make sure to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast to help support MVP. We're trying to get our own studio. This is the main goal with every dollar we raise from Patreon in 2019. You can support us at the bronze, silver, and gold tiers and get some cool stuff like be a call-in on a podcast every month, help pick topics for podcasts each and every month, or at the bronze tier, you can get access to our brand new MVP Discord server and talk to the Patreon family at MVP along with the MVP crew. But if you're new to how we do a mock draft, we cut it up into 3 big segments. We do 1 through 10, 11 through 21, then 22 through 32. So, Mark, I will start with you. We'll do 1 through 10 to start. Start off at number 1. Give us your picks for 1 through 10 in our final mock draft.
All right. So, for number 1 for the Cardinals, I've gone back. I deviated just once, but I'm back to Nick Bosa, defensive end out of The Ohio State University. For the 49ers, number 2, Quinnen Williams, defensive tackle out of Alabama. Follow that up with the Jets, which going with Jonah Williams, offensive tackle out of Alabama again. Raiders going to go with Kyler Murray, quarterback out of Oklahoma. The Bucks going to go with Josh Allen, outside linebacker, Kentucky. Giants sticking with it, Dwayne Haskins, quarterback, The Ohio State University. Then for the Jaguars at 7, Montez Sweat, defensive end, Mississippi State. 8, T.J. Hawkinson, tight end out of Iowa. 9, DK Metcalf, wide receiver out of Ole Miss, and then rounding it all out with number 10 for the Broncos, Drew Lock, quarterback out of Missouri.
And going right into mine, I am just like you. I have deviated. It was ever since the Cardinals were the number 1 pick. I had Nick Bosa, and just like you in the 5.0. And I apologize. I called this the 5.0 2 seconds ago. This is our 6.0 for the NFL. I have actually gone back also, and the Cardinals will take Nick Bosa at number 1. Then the 49ers go Josh Allen, the outside linebacker from Kentucky at number 2. Then number 3, the New York Jets going Quinnen Williams, defensive tackle from Roll Tide, Alabama. Then the Raiders go Montez Sweat, defensive end from Mississippi State. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 5 go Kyler Murray, quarterback from Oklahoma. Giants at 6 going Drew Lock, quarterback from Mizzou. Then the Jags at 7 go Jawan Taylor, offensive tackle from Florida. Then the Lions at 8 go Greedy Williams, cornerback from LSU. Then the Bills at 9 go Rashawn Gary, defensive end from the Michigan Wolverines. And then rounding out the top 10, the Broncos take Dwayne Haskins, quarterback from the Ohio State University. And Mark, I'm going to switch the order up in which I put these topics. We'll get the easy one out of the way first, the one that I don't think is going to take a ton of time. And that is the guy that before we hit record, you were like, I have to see how many podcasts we have talked about him in mocks. And from what you looked at, ever since the first mock draft, we've had a Kyler Murray discussion each and every time. So let's have our annual Kyler Murray discussion here. Why did you have him go at 4 to the Raiders?
Well, it's an interesting one. It's something that I think I could actually see happening. And the reason I say that is because of John Gruden's love for him. Probably not Mayock's love. I mean, Mayock is going to be I assume, a little bit more reserved than John Gruden. I'm hoping that's kind of the reason why they brought him in. But I would go ahead and actually say that I would not be terribly surprised if they do move on from Derek Carr. And part of that's just simply going to be the fact that there's not really, they didn't draft him. He's obviously good, but it's not like he's done anything amazing for the team currently. So really, to me, I look at that and say, all right, they can move on. And John Gruden's already kind of expressed his love for Kyler Murray multiple times. So why not? Why not go ahead and draft him? Derek Carr would get you more than, say, Rosen would get you for the Arizona Cardinals. So I actually would say this makes a little bit more sense than the Arizona Cardinals going with Kyler.
And the thing I find funny about the Raiders, because I almost did the same thing that you did. And the one thing I will say is with this mock draft, the thing that kind of differs a little bit for me is because this kind of almost mirrors what you may see with my full 7-round mock draft. It'll be coming out on mostvaluablepodcasts.com very, very soon, later this week. I kind of do that one where I put myself where, okay, I am the GM, I am drafting, I am looking out for the best interest of this team, not like, hey, I really want Kyler Murray to go here. And I at first was like, oh, the Raiders will draft him. But then I started to kind of think a little bit, and there was an article recently on ESPN where I guess John Gruden has told Mike Mayock, don't mess it up, dude. I took a lot of slings to get you 3 first-round picks. So it kind of seems like maybe John Gruden's putting the heat on Mike Mayock to make these picks. And the thing I like from what Mayock said after that was you always have to go back to trusting who you are as an evaluator. I'm a son of a coach, and I know how coaches think. And coaches think need. And we're a coach-driven building. Our coaches are highly involved. That's good. I embrace that. The flip side is you can't reach. You've got to use some common sense, and that's what I preach. And that's what I almost kind of come into this discussion with that quote mainly. If it's Mike Mayock, the guy who is making the final decision, I kind of have a hard time with him drafting Kyler Murray when I know they said sometimes you can't go with need and coaches are going to always think need, but I can't help think that he's going to sit there and go, hey, we need a better quarterback than Derek Carr for the future. Let's go and get Kyler Murray instead of going, hey, this draft has a lot of good pass rushers. Let's get a really good one right now because we've got 2 picks later on in the first round to where I can maybe trade up if I want to get one of the other quarterbacks and don't have to really, I'll use the term reach, but it wouldn't be a reach at 4, but I don't have to snag Kyler at 4 if I really want to trade up for a quarterback with the ammunition I have later in the first.
But if Kyler Murray is the one guy you want, he's probably not going to still be there. So you're passing up your chance to get him when, like you said, there's a lot of good pass rushers. Maybe you can trade up for one of those good pass rushers a little bit later. Maybe it's a Montez Sweat, who falls a little bit. I think it's easier to get a pass rusher than it's going to be to get the quarterback if you like the quarterback. But, it's the same reason why I was not a fan of Arizona drafting a quarterback, because they don't need it. They have other things they need.
Mm-hmm.
And quite simply, I still think Josh Rosen can be good. I still think that Derek Carr can be good, but at least Derek Carr's a little bit older than Josh Rosen. But yeah, it's definitely not the most. It's not a definite. It's not like we're going to sit there and go, yeah, this is for sure what they're doing. But it's certainly possible.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about the Raiders before we go into where I had Kyler Murray going is when I put myself in the shoes, I looked at Derek Carr. He's under contract until 2023. And when I look at his stats aren't terrible. Like, you look at his completion percentage, and except for 2017, where he only played 15 of the 16 games, and they went 6-9 that year, his completion percentage has gone up every single year. And this year under John Gruden in his first year, it was the highest completion percentage that Derek Carr has ever had. It's also the most yards that Derek Carr has ever had. And the thing that I look at is the one lone season where Derek Carr had his only winning percentage, which was in 2016, where they went 12-3 with him as the quarterback. I look at that and I go, he only had 6 interceptions to his 28 touchdowns. So I go, maybe you don't have to go with quarterback there because you already have it. And after this year 2 under Gruden, if you really don't like it, there's going to be quarterbacks next year that may turn out to be better than the quarterbacks we have in this draft. And that's why I had the Raiders pass on them. But then, Mark, the next pick below the Raiders, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I sat there, and this is something that I will say Bruce Arians will not do, the Buccaneers will not do. This is me to where if I was the GM of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I would sit there and go, I know that we could use an inside linebacker, we could use defensive line help, we could also go with cornerback. But if Kyler Murray is there at number 5, how do you not draft him knowing how shaky Jameis Winston has been and knowing that this is a contract year for famous Jameis?
Well, I can tell you how you choose not to do it. You choose not to do it because it's not going to be that much of an improvement over Jameis Winston. A lot of the issues you have with Jameis Winston, you're going to have different issues with Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's going to get hurt. Kyler Murray is not going to make the kind of decisions that Jameis makes, turns the ball over a bunch. But when it comes to the pressure, people complain that Jameis can't rise above it. Kyler Murray doesn't rise above the pressure either. Mm-hmm. He's never really had pressure. He's never had to kind of transcend his team a little bit. Not in the way you're going to want somebody who's going to replace Jameis Winston. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm all in on the Jameis Winston should be gone train, and who knows, maybe Bruce Arians saying that, nope, I'm good with Jameis. Maybe that was a smokescreen from the beginning, and maybe they'll surprise everybody in draft 1. I just don't think that Kyler Murray is the right kind of transition you make after Jameis. I think if you're going to draft a quarterback to do something different, it's got to be a different kind of quarterback than Jameis Winston is.
And that's why, sidebar to this, if Kyler Murray, let's say Kyler Murray goes before number 5, the Bucs just in general, I think are going to be a team that next year, when we're talking about the 2020 draft a year from now, we are going to heavily be talking about them in the running for one of the quarterbacks next year because, like I said, it's Jameis Winston's last year. Unless they give him a contract extension, they're going to have to do something, and they may be a team like the Miami Dolphins this year, where I know that Miami traded Ryan Tannehill away and brought in a veteran journeyman like Ryan Fitzpatrick, but the Bucs may be in the same situation next year where it's like, hey, we don't want to re-sign Jameis Winston. we have to get a journeyman quarterback to come in or trade for one like the Redskins did this year and then draft a young quarterback to maybe be under him to start the year. I just looked at that and I went, if I was Bruce Arians, I would take a stab at Kyler Murray because Jameis Winston is not the future for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But let's move on to the two teams I did really want to hit in this top, and it's two teams we've hit at nauseum, but you're going to hit these at nauseum until the draft because they are the two teams that I think have the most news and the most speculation about them besides the Cardinals at number one. The first one is the Giants. And the thing I want to ask you is, so we did our live mock draft this weekend for MVP. You guys can go and check it out. And when the Jets pick came up, it was one where the team that you had, I won't spoil which teams, but the team that you had, you were looking to trade. The team that I had, I was looking to trade. Sean with the Jets had some calls coming in for that pick. As we get closer and closer to draft week, are you kind of thinking to yourself that it is almost a for sure that 3 pick is going to be traded on the, 25th of April?
No, not at all. There's no for sure any of these things are going to be traded. Are they a likely one? Yes, because it depends on, if Nick Bosa and Quinnen Williams go, or Josh Allen instead of Quinnen, then, quarterbacks are available. If, let's say, Kyler Murray goes, all of a sudden there's an extra good pass rusher or something like that. Like, it's definitely one that can go, but I'm sorry, the Jets are a team that I think should probably just make the pick at 3. Get yourself one of those really, really good, talented players. Because you look at it, you guys need an edge. The Jets need an edge rusher. Mm-hmm. They need an offensive tackle. Corner, they can probably wait on. But they need those two positions. Getting Jonah Williams, one of the best offensive linemen, maybe Jawan Taylor, best offensive lineman. You can maybe get yourself a guy like Josh Allen, even Montez Sweat, who's climbed up the board, and that might be maybe a tiny bit early for some people when it comes to Montez Sweat. But I'm sorry, it's just, you got to go for it. Mm-hmm. The Jets have kind of established themselves a little bit as an actual team that can compete this year. They still need to kind of hit the right strides in the draft and then in the offseason, or not the offseason, in the preseason as well. But they're not as far removed as they were last year. So you kind of got to take advantage of what you got. Sure, it would be nice to trade back if you can get a lot of things. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. And part of it to me is simply that I don't think the Jets are that far removed from competing for a wild card spot because, same division as the Patriots. They're not going to win the division. So you got to do whatever you can. And if it gets you one of those great playmakers, the guy who's going to keep Sam Darnold on his feet, or the guy who's going to go out there and be like an Aaron Donald, be a Von Miller, be a Khalil Mack, if you can get yourself one of those, you do not hesitate, and you do not go ahead and pass up that opportunity.
See, this is one where you and I are on opposite sides of the table, and I think it's because, for me, what we mentioned with the Kyler Murray discussion is the fact that this draft is heavily defensive. So, I look at just the top 3 needs for the New York Jets. I'll throw in top 4 because offensive tackle is a big one as well. But you look at D-line, so they can go with a Quinnen Williams at 3. Edge rusher, they could go with a Josh Allen at 3. Cornerback, Greedy Williams in the top 10 would be there for them. And then offensive tackle, either a Jawan Taylor or a Jonah Williams, whichever one you like. Those guys are the top 2 offensive linemen for this draft class. And I look at every single team in the first round that could be trading up for that number 3 pick. And I just, using my mock as an example, let's say the Giants at number 6. Well, Looks like you'll still be able to get your offensive tackle. You'll still be able to get a defensive end there. You might be able to still get a linebacker there if that's what you're looking for. If we go down to the Broncos, same thing. There'll be pass rushers there. There'll be a cornerbacks there. You go to the Bengals, kind of the same thing with the Broncos, because they're so close. And then even at the Redskins, I feel like there are points at, and yes, the talent is different. Like, for example, a guy like Dexter Lawrence or Christian Williams is going to be rated right now differently than a Quinnen Williams. But the thing that the Jets have to think about is because they moved up for Darnold last year, they gave away a hefty amount of picks. And the thing I've been harping on with the Jets and why I've been in favor of them trading the pick, if it's not too far back, like Sean was saying in our live mock draft, that I'm only trading it if I stay in the top 10, which I would kind of stick to if I was the Jets as well. But you look at it and they've got the number 3 overall pick, and then their next pick isn't until the 68th pick in the 3rd round. So with me, I'm kind of thinking if you need all that defensive help and can still get it later on in the 1st, why not make that deal, move back, accumulate picks so that you can get more guys to fill more needs and more holes to help this team?
But here's the thing, though. Like I said, the Jets are not that far removed. We talk about their defense, but they've got Leonard Williams. They got C.J. Mosley. They got Jamal Adams. They got Tremaine Johnson. They've got good players. On offense, they got Darnold. They got Bell. They've got okay wide receivers. They could get better there. To where I look at it and I'm like, you're in the top 3. Take that player who's going to change your team. You know, you're going to get somebody, supposedly, if you're in the top 5, you're going to get somebody who's going to be a, like, kind of generational type of player for your team. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get someone this good anytime soon. And you talk about, first of all, with the Bucks, or not with the Bucks, with the Giants, if we're using either one of our mock drafts, the Giants are going to be fine to draft a quarterback. Yeah. They don't need to trade up. But if you talk about the Jets, let's say the Jets do trade back to, you know, like a Broncos or something like that to 10, maybe it's the Bengals, whoever. But you look at that and all of a sudden, Bosa's gone, Allen's gone, Williams is gone. You're going to lose Rashawn Gary. You're going to lose Greedy Williams. You're going to lose Devin White, potentially. You're losing all of these great players that you're, you know, I totally understand what you're saying, that there's a chance you can get back and you can still get somebody good, and there are still good players there. But you got to be careful with that because all of a sudden you need a pass rusher. Well, the 4 or 5 best pass rushers in the draft just went. And now you're sitting there at 10 going, whoops. You know, when you could have had the 2nd best pass rusher potentially on your team. Now, it's a little bit different of offensive line. If they're going to really try and hit that offensive line, they might only lose 1, maybe 2 offensive linemen. So I do think they need to be hesitant if they're going to try and trade back because this team is good. This team will win games next year. You get a really, really good pass rusher, or you get a really, really solid rock at your offensive lineman, whether it's a tackle, whether it's a guard, that's going to be something that's going to change your team for the better and get you some extra wins.
And for me, I kind of sit there, and the thing that I'm thinking is, so I've got a second caveat that I'll say. First off, I was saying, like, if I can stay in the top 10, that would be a goal. But number 2 with the Jets, it depends on, for me, where does Josh Allen go? If Josh Allen goes to let's say Nick Bosa goes number 1 and the 49ers go, well, we need a pass rusher, I'm going to go with Josh Allen at number 2, like how my mock rolled out. Then if I'm the Jets, I'm more likely to make that trade because even if I move back to the Redskins, and that's just me picking the furthest team that could need a quarterback, furthest down team in the draft that could need a quarterback, based on where all the mocks had, I can at least get maybe a Jonah Williams or even an Andre Dillard there at 15. And then with the second round pick that I would have accumulated from the Redskins, hopefully that's in the deal. That's why I'm assuming that the Redskins, what would that pick be? The 46th overall pick. Ooh, that one might be too low to get that defensive end. So maybe I might think about that. But even if it's like a New York, let's say New York does move up, you're still in the top 10 of the first round. And at 37, yeah, I passed up on Quinnen Williams, but I can get a defensive tackle like maybe a Jerry Tillery is still there at 37. So, I mean, the Jets, to me, coming off of this discussion, I'm agreeing with you in the fact that it's not 100% that they traded or not. But I would heavily think about it depending on what the Jets do. If they're fine waiting until the third round, then go ahead and just make that pick at 3. But if they want to gain some more players, they might have to make that deal in order to get more picks. The last team I want to throw your way is the Giants, and we've talked about them ad nauseum, Mark. The thing I want to ask you about the Giants is something that I don't think we've necessarily hit. We might have hit it a little bit when we talked about them maybe drafting Daniel Jones at 17. But the thing I want to ask you is, should the Giants look defense at 6 compared to what both you and I have, quarterback at the 6th overall pick?
Should they? I think it depends on how the draft goes. Let's say somebody does magically trade up, or Arizona takes Kyler Murray, number 1 overall. So quarterback goes right off the bat, quarterback 1. Quarterback 2, let's say, somebody else trades. Now we're losing 2 quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Who cares who it is, but they trade with the Jets, they trade with the Raiders, doesn't matter. So you're now sitting there at the 3rd best quarterback. And with that, with that top 5, if 2 of those quarterbacks already went, all of a sudden at 6, you're getting a top 5 defensive talent. Mm-hmm. Then yeah, definitely. You're not going to get a Nick Bosa. You're probably not going to get like a Josh Allen or a Quinnen Williams, but you could still go. You might actually get one of those guys. You might end up with a Quinnen Williams. You might actually end up with a Josh Allen because somebody might go offensive line instead in that top 5. One of those other few picks that aren't going to be a quarterback. Mm-hmm. If you can make that happen, then yeah, go for it. Because if you're not going to get one of the best quarterbacks anyways, what's the point in spending number 6 overall on the 3rd best quarterback? Mm-hmm. If the 3rd best quarterback's not one that they're that thrilled about. And if these teams have already traded up, well, you know what? Maybe these other teams are going to do the same thing. Maybe then the Washington Redskins or the Bengals say, well, we don't have a chance at one of these quarterbacks, so whatever, we'll just go fill one of our other needs. We'll fill one of these defensive needs since defense has slipped. It really is just going to depend. I mean, they totally could go on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think that if they do that, they then just go out and end up getting like Daniel Jones at 17. Mm-hmm. I think if they go defense at 6, they might double down and go more defense at 17 or a wide receiver. They could be one of these early teams and get, Marquise Hollywood Brown. Mm-hmm. That would be a nice kind of addition, a nice replacement to a guy that they just lost in Odell Beckham Jr. So I think they definitely can. I still think they probably go quarterback, but if these other quarterbacks start going before they get the chance, then yeah, totally go defense. Make that team better. You still have Eli for at least 1 year. You might even get to squeeze 2 years out of him. And it's not like Eli's bad. He's just kind of past his prime. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can even work something out, Maybe if the Cardinals did take him, maybe you can get a Josh Rosen. Maybe if this isn't actually going to happen, but I have to throw it out there, maybe if by the end of today while we're recording this podcast mm-hmm. and Russell Wilson doesn't get re-signed, and the rumor, apparently, I think this is just him trying to get some leverage, but the rumor was that if this isn't done today, he will just not re-sign with the Seahawks no matter what. Mm-hmm. He doesn't care, and apparently what he was asking for is pretty ridiculous, and the fact that he wants his deal to slide up with the cap. So he wants to really handicap his team.
Speaking of Russell Wilson, I want to throw this out at you. This is a trade I saw on Twitter for involving Russell Wilson that I thought was, to be brash about it, pretty stupid. But I want to throw it your way to see what you think. Basically, it's a deal that involves the Cardinals, the Giants, and the Seahawks. The Giants would get Russell Wilson. That's all they would get. The Seahawks would get the number 1 overall pick plus some other pick from either the Giants or the Cardinals, like a later round pick. And then the Cardinals would get the 17th pick and the 21st pick, as well as a different pick from either the Seahawks or the Giants. What would your thoughts be on that? Russell Wilson goes to the Giants. The Cardinals move from 1 all the way to 17 and 21. And then the Seahawks get basically Kyler Murray at number 1.
Well, unless maybe I missed something in there, it sounds like the Giants really get the steal. They are the winners. They get to keep number 6 overall.
Yeah.
And they get Russell Wilson. That's huge. Now, the flip side of it is they've now created a mess for themselves because they have Eli Manning and Russell Wilson. But yeah, that would be huge. That would be huge for them. Never going to happen, and we definitely don't get 3-team trades in the NFL. So yeah, nice little fantasy type of a thing, but it's not obviously going to happen.
And of course, I was wrong. So I've got I found it on Twitter and I pulled it up. I was completely wrong. So kids, never go off your memory. Always look things up. So the Cardinals would get the 6th and the 17th. Wow, this is really stupid. They would get the 6th, 17th, and 37th. So the Giants are giving up their first 3 picks to the Cardinals. The Cardinals are giving their first overall pick to the Seahawks. And the Seahawks would also get a 2020 and 2021 conditional 2nd or 3rd round pick. And the Giants would receive Russell Wilson.
Yeah, silly is right.
Yeah, that makes a little bit more sense because you said they get to keep the 6th, and I was like, I should probably look this up from going off of my memory. But the whole reason why I brought up the defensive player thing for the Giants at 6 is because this week when I've been looking at draft stuff, obviously doing these mock drafts where I'm constantly Googling NFL draft to see what different sites, different team websites are talking about. And the one guy that has come up numerous times this week and even last week a little bit is Devin White. And just right away, there were 4 articles I saw. First one was from SB Nation, where is Devin White a better pick for the Giants than a quarterback? Then you got one from SB Nation's personal Giants site, where they say, is Devin White the linebacker the Giants have been searching for? And then even ones from the New York Post where they say LSU linebacker may be the leader this Giants defense needs. I'll ask you that in just directly, is Devin White a guy? If let's say Devin White or quarterback, whether it's Drew Lock, whether it's Dwayne Haskins, which is the better pick for the Giants if we're narrowing it down to Devin White versus the quarterbacks?
Well, a quarterback would be better because, when it comes to, kind of a classic linebacker like a Devin White, they don't really need one that badly. If you were talking about a Josh Allen, an edge rusher, then I can say, sure, that makes a little bit more sense to me. I don't see linebacker as that pressing of a need. Now you could say, yeah, the quarterback's not that pressing of a need. You don't need him till maybe next year. But Eli Manning's is an old quarterback. He could go bad at any time. Really, that cliff is a real thing for every quarterback that's not Tom Brady. And quarterbacks are such a difficult position to get right that if you truly feel you've got the guy, you got to go get him. And you got to let him maybe sit there and learn for a little bit. So, yeah, I don't have any issue with that at all.
Now, go ahead with what you were going to say.
I was just going to say, just to add it out there,
Now, the flip side is if you truly believe, if you're the Giants' war room, that this Devin White guy is going to be a change, he's going to be the difference maker for your defense, then yeah, obviously you go do it. But I just don't think of it as pressing of a need.
Now, here's the thing I'm kind of looking at here, and this could get interesting for the Giants, is let's say it's 6, because one of the articles I have seen talked about how Devin White, although it's not a big need, could be Saquon-like for the Giant defense, where it's like last year, running back was a need for the Giants, but they really had a bigger need.
I would say it was enough of a need.
Yeah, some would say that the quarterback was a bigger need for the Giants last year, and people were baffled how they didn't take Sam Darnold.
Well, then they definitely shouldn't take a linebacker this year.
The thing, though, that I'm looking at here is, so if we look at last year as history, we had a similar trade last year for the 10th overall pick. So this would this year have to be between the Giants and the Broncos. Last year, Oakland moved back. Arizona moved up from 15th overall to 10th overall in the Josh Rosen trade, where they gave Oakland the 15th overall pick, the 79th overall pick, which would have been their third rounder, and then the 152nd, which would have been their fifth rounder. So if the Giants did that similar trade, it would be the 17th overall pick, the 32nd overall pick, and then either the 142, 143 in the fifth round. Is that something that should be on the table for the Giants? And this is all, like you said earlier, depending on how the draft lays out. Could we see the Giants? Because for me, that could be an interesting thing. And it all depends on, at that point, what the Broncos' draft plans are. Because they're another team that is kind of like, hey, we could take a quarterback too. And we've worked out Drew Lock and Dwayne Haskins also. So I'm thinking that maybe we'd have to bump it up one, and they'd have to trade with the Bills at 9 instead of the Broncos at 10. But, like, that's something that I would maybe look at, too, if I was the Giants, of, hey, at 6, I can take a defensive guy here and then try to use that pick I got from the Odell deal to use some later picks to move up to get a quarterback if I feel the guy, because Jacksonville's not going to take a quarterback. Detroit's, they say they could take a quarterback. Let's be honest, they're not going to take a quarterback. And Buffalo's not going to take a quarterback. The only thing that you're playing with here, which is the playing with fire, is the chance of, like in the live mock that both you and I did, I'll spoil it, I was the Giants, you were the Redskins, and you and I kind of battled each other for the, we could trade up. Oh, no, we could trade up. That's the only fire you play with. The Redskins could trade up to a higher pick and take a guy, but could you see the Giants doing that, going defense at 6, then using the 17th overall to move back up into the top 10 to take a quarterback, maybe like a Dwayne Haskins or a Drew Lock?
No, I think that would be a very dumb decision. It's just, if you really feel like you need to get the quarterback there, then draft the quarterback at 6. Mm-hmm. You just kind of look silly to draft a player and then, oh no, we got to trade up now, and give up more draft capital to go up and get that quarterback now. It's a bad look, and they're going to have to give up too much.
Mm-hmm.
They end up having to give up multiple picks when the Giants, unlike the Jets, are a team that's kind of far from the playoffs. They do need as many picks as possible. So it's interesting. I mean, could they do it? Sure. And if they get their players, not to kind of reference the movie Draft Day, but, people, it is kind of a true point that people aren't going to really care about where a guy was drafted, just if your team is good or bad, if the player is good or bad. But, yeah, to me, if you're going to go with that defensive player and then you're going to trade up, I just don't see it.
And just the thing with me that kind of it doesn't baffle me, but I can't remember. Do you remember the last draft in our lifetime where we didn't know this close to the draft? We didn't have an exact idea who the number one pick was going to be, and it created all this speculation. Would it have been Goff and Wentz? Would it have been Winston or Mariota?
It was last year. Baker Mayfield was a surprise.
But we knew a quarterback was going. I'm talking like
no, not really. There
had
plenty
an idea.
of people there were plenty of people who said Saquon Barkley would be the first overall pick,
which I was all for.
You were one of them. Yeah. I agree with it. I thought it would have worked out because I thought they still would have been able to actually get Baker Mayfield at 4. They obviously wouldn't have been able to do that because he was number 1 overall. But yeah, I would say last year, I would say the only last time we really had the sure thing was Andrew Luck. Really? Andrew Luck was the last time that we 100% knew who the first overall pick was going to be.
I mean, I would say Myles Garrett was pretty much locked in at number 1. Am I wrong?
Yeah, he probably was too.
Like, the only one I'm thinking about, and this is probably the only draft that I've completely forgot about because it went offensive tackle for the first 2 picks. But for the life of me, I cannot remember if we knew who the Chiefs were going to. I feel like we didn't know, and when Eric Fisher was picked, we were like, really? They took an offensive tackle at number 1?
Well, if I remember right, it kind of started to get talked about as the draft got closer, and it was kind of exactly that where people were thinking, there's no way they're going to take an offensive tackle at number 1 overall. And then they did.
Yeah, but like you look at all the other picks in that draft that were not offensive tackles, like Deion Jordan was the top defensive end taken. Ansah was number 2. Like, there was no standout guy. Plus quarterback, that was obviously the E.J. Manuel draft. So, I mean, quarterbacks were not going to go that high. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in the comment section about 1 through 10. What do you think how this is going to shake up? Where are the different quarterbacks going to go? If you're the Giants, what do you do? If you're the Jets, what do you do? Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section.